Thank you very much. So thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to pay tribute to my hero, Åke Bergman, and a constant source of inspiration in the last 25 years. Thanks very much to the organizing committee for the invitation to come. A few months ago, Joelle contacted me with the question if I would be the final speaker today. She asked me to give a visionary outlook on how to achieve a chemical-safe world. It's quite a daunting task, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I hope you will forgive me that I have written down my thoughts and I have chosen to read them today, rather than present them to you off the top of my head, which I usually do when I'm presenting scientific data. But today I'm not showing any of my data or my nice new microplastics project. I'm talking about what a chemical-safe world would look like and how can we get there. So it made sense to me to write it down and to read it to you. A vision for a chemical-safe world is symbolized by this beautiful sunny picture. It was taken by my beautiful sunny daughter, Diana. Diana is the future, and I like to picture the future of a chemical-free world like this, sunny, bright, and green, and golden. But when I was thinking about the future of a chemical-free future, a chemical-safe world, I thought about a similar term I've heard before, the term the non-toxic environment. I remembered that Europe actually has its own ambitious vision for a chemical-safe world. The European Commission wrote in a recent report, a non-toxic environment should be understood as an environment that is free from chemical pollution and of exposures to hazardous chemicals at levels that are harmful to human health and to the environment. I think we could take the European vision even a step further. And I remembered a wise quote I once heard, a quote that originates from the Iroquois Indians in North America. It was perhaps the first referral to the precautionary principle. In our every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. That's epigenetics for you, Joelle. So a chemical-safe world, what would it actually look like? There would be a number of requirements to have a chemical-safe world, a number of conditions that would need to be met. In thinking about these conditions, I consulted some documents from 2 of the most visionary countries on chemicals, Sweden and Denmark, as well as an NGO that I admire very much, the NGO called Health and Environment Alliance. And together with some of their ideas and some of my own ideas, I came up with the following 7 conditions or 7 requirements for a chemical-safe world that I'd like to go through with you today. First of all, a chemical-safe world is a world in which people, animals, and environment are not exposed to toxic chemicals. It would be a world in which we truly believe and live by the concept of One Health, shown here. That is a concept that integrates the 3 domains of health: human health, animal health, and environmental health. It is the concept that is built on the understanding that there is really only one health, shared by humans and wildlife and the ecosystem alike, and what affects one affects all 3. Healthy humans need healthy animals and a healthy environment. In turn, pollution of the environment will lead to negative health effects on wildlife and on human health, period. We know this in a chemical-safe world. A chemical-safe world based on the concept of One Health would mean that exposure to toxic chemicals from different sources and through different uses would be truly reduced. It would mean that toxic and hazardous chemicals would not be found in the environment or in food or consumer items, including those that are recycled. It would mean that we would have found a way to speed up the identification of chemicals of high concern. In this world, this utopia, we will have phased out chemicals of concern, the chemicals that Åke has given so much attention in his career, the endocrine disruptors, the flame retardants, the perfluorinated compounds, etc. A chemical-safe world is a world in which we give attention to vulnerable groups. Vulnerable groups are protected. Those who are most at risk from the effects of chemicals are protected first. The unborn child, children, adolescents, the elderly, but also individuals who are exposed at the workplace and communities with low incomes and parents-to-be. In the future, people will be living more alone in small spaces. This means that we need to pay attention to indoor environmental quality as well as outdoor environmental quality. And there will be concrete protection measures and special attention in particular to children and what they are exposed to. So they are our future and the future of the next 7 generations. A chemical world is one in which chemical legislations are coordinated and consistent, right? So we have laws that put health first rather than economic growth and gain. Once a substance has been identified as concerning for health under one regulation, its identification is translated to many other regulations with a clear target for exposure and reduction of exposure to those chemicals. So chemical legislation like REACH and the pesticides and the biocides regulation will all talk to each other and would be implemented to the full extent and be consistent with all other pieces of European legislation. Margareta is smiling, I see her back there. It's a utopia, I know, but it's a problem nowadays when one legislation calls for one thing and another one protects some other part. And they're at odds with each other. In this way, in the way that if we were to be able to have consistent laws, we could make sure that people are certain, they're certain that their products are safe, and the identified substance of concern will get on the market, and they will be safe, whatever their use is, and whatever regulation or legislative jurisdiction they fall under. Another condition of a chemical safe world, one, and we've talked about this afternoon so wonderfully, chemical risk assessment would adequately address mixtures and adequately address long-term effects. The current chemical assessment process will have been adapted to reflect the reality of exposures to low doses and mixtures of multiple chemicals over long periods of time, rather than single chemicals. The magnitude of the risk of mixtures to human health and the environment would be recognized and accepted. And it would include the consideration of the role of chemicals, not just as a killer, poison as a killer, but as Tom said, also as playing an important role in these complex diseases that are becoming more and more prevalent in our society nowadays. Cancer, metabolic disorders, neurological dysfunction. In this utopia, major data gaps will have been filled, especially for the long term. But not only that, this is because companies and private industry will have receive the incentives to provide the data they must provide. Data will not only be about the health risks, but also about which chemicals they're using, which products, the requirements for industry that Derek talked about so well this morning. In a chemical safe world, risk assessment is a mature science in its own right. Risk assessors are groups of interdisciplinary scientists, interdisciplinary thinkers. They are team scientists. They have expertise in biology, chemistry, and medicine, and social sciences, exposure sciences. Really, what I think toxicologists are really meant to be. This allows them to anticipate future contaminants rather than only react once they're on the market. And regrettable substitution of chemicals, of one toxic chemical by another, will be a thing of the past. A chemical safe world is a world where there is sufficient and ample funding for research and for improving test methods. To protect health and to support the substitution of toxic chemicals with safer alternatives, we need funding, and constant funding for new research into the health effects of chemicals, into improved testing methods and guidelines, so that we are able to really predict the complexity of health effects and account for them in the evaluation of our chemicals. This is essential for a better understanding of endocrine disruption, for brain development, for female reproduction, for metabolic disruption, all of these concepts that were covered in these 4 new European projects I'm so happy to participate in. and that were conceptualized here in Sweden at Swetox. In a chemical safe world, we will focus on the mechanistic basis of toxic effects so that we can better predict effects across species. And we will make use of the huge advancements in the world of computational toxicology, of machine learning, artificial intelligence. We will do research based on human models for human health. We will do state-of-the-art analysis using computational models like the ones presented by Patrick this morning. The use of rodent studies to predict health effects in humans as the gold standard will be a thing of the past. We will predict health effects in humans using human cells and human data. A chemical safe world is one which the public is aware, informed, and actively participates. Consumers would be able to get information, the full information on the products they buy and use, including transparent information about the potential health effects and guidance for protection of using or disposing of products that contain chemicals. There will be better communication with consumers all along the supply chain. In the end, the public will not only be better informed and aware of the potential hazards of chemicals, they will be actually engaged and they will participate in the debate, and their voices will be heard. Social assessment is an integral part of risk assessment. And initiatives like this one, this is the European Citizens Initiative that gathered 1 million signatures against the use of glyphosate. It called for a stop for the use of glyphosate. These kinds of initiatives will not be ignored in a chemical safe world. A broader societal discussion and debate about the use of chemicals will be commonplace in a chemical safe world. And citizen science initiatives to engage the public in our research, but also in our decisions, will be second nature. I'm liking this world. Finally, the seventh condition. A chemical safe future is one in which the chemicals we use are safe, sustainable, and essential. Yeah. I have already mentioned that a chemical-free world is based on the premise that the chemicals we use are non-toxic and can be used safely. But not only that, the chemicals that we use have to be sustainable. They have to be used in a way that reduces their CO2 footprint. They have to be used in a way that enables materials to circulate and be recycled in the economy for longer. So a chemical safe world is based on a circular economy, on decarbonization, and on protecting our natural capital and our biodiversity. Production and consumption cycles need to be rethought, and they will be rethought. And the circular economy will be an opportunity, not a burden, but an opportunity to redesign products and processes, to use creative ideas of all the people in the room and outside to improve chemicals management. And the last point I want to make is about this essentiality, is that the word? Essentialness of a chemical. For me, a vision for a chemical safe world is one in which the chemicals that we use are the ones that we really need. Listening to Derek's talk today, and he inspired me already a few months ago when I heard him in China, it just was mind-boggling for me about the sheer numbers of chemicals that are out there in our world right now. And of course, they're not all toxic, but the fact that there are so many chemicals out there makes me wonder, do we really even know what we use these chemicals for? Do we even need these chemicals? Do we know anymore? Have we faced an industry that has gone mad with unbridled growth and development? Have we really lost sight of what we need them for? And in a chemical safe world, we will not have accepted that unbridled growth. We will know that unbridled growth goes with an unacceptable cost to our health, an unacceptable cost to our environment. In a chemical safe world, we've done the risk-benefit analysis, and we've decided in many cases to phase out chemicals that we just don't need, or we will substitute them with smart, non-chemical alternatives, sometimes even water. Well, there you have it. the 7 requirements for a chemical safe future. My vision, and that of some others as well, of what a chemical safe future and world would look like. Bright and sunny. Sounds like utopia. The question is, how will we ever get there? I'm not there. I have 10 more minutes to tell you how we're going to get there. But I looked at Åke's face just now and he went, oh. So if you'll allow me, thank you for this intermittent applause. That's the first time I've ever had applause before. I've now told you about what the world would look like to all of us. I think we all agree that this is the world we want, right? But how will we get there? How will we go from science to action for a chemical safe world? Well, today is all about Professor Åke Bergmans. If there's anyone who's brought us closer to a chemical safe world, it is Åke. And how has he done it? I would like to spend the last few minutes of my lecture reviewing the lessons I've learned in the past 25 years, being inspired by Åke. I have boiled this down to 5 qualities. First we had 7 conditions, and now we have 5 qualities. I'm good at these numbers too, without even knowing. These qualities are like lessons to me, and I want to share them with you all. And you've heard some of them today already, so they're not all new. But they are the way to move forward into a chemical safe world. So the lessons I have learned from Professor Åke Bergmans. Number 1, excellence. One of my most and first clear memories of Åke was when I was a PhD student, like a similar time as Patrick. Actually, it was 1998 at the Dioxin conference in Stockholm. Åke opened the conference in the beautiful new Aula Magna of the Stockholm University. I think the first time that Aula auditorium had ever been used for a public audience, and that's where I was allowed to have my first international lecture. It is a glorious auditorium made entirely of wood. Only the Swedes can make something like that, I think. And there he was, the man I'd heard so much about and read so much about. World-famous organic chemist, synthesist, incredible scientific knowledge in environmental and analytical and organic chemistry, later to broaden his expertise in many other fields. The absolute world expert on PCBs, brominated flame retardants, and many other persistent and non-persistent chemicals. A true scientist at heart, whose reputation for scientific excellence has brought him further in the quest for a chemical safe world. In the words of Tuomo Karjalainen, senior expert in environmental health at DG Research at the European Commission, Tuomo says, through his well-known scientific expertise in especially analytical methods for chemicals, but also in many related disciplines, to name endocrine disruption, for example, Åke has gained a solid reputation in the European Commission as a reliable expert and source of information. From Åke, I have learned that a strong and critical scientific basis is the best foundation for action. Number 2, and we've heard about this today as well, collaboration. Åke has taught me that changing the world is not something you do by yourself. You do it by surrounding yourself by like-minded people and sharing your talents. Åke is the best collaborator and networker I have ever met. We collaborated on the multidisciplinary EU projects on Compare and Fire, but I've also seen him in action in China with his colleagues. He inspires and encourages his colleagues to do and get things done. Tuomo calls him a true European, but I think he fits in wherever he goes. Clearly, the transition to a chemical safe world will require buy-in from people of all walks of life, from various organizations and various disciplines, from believers and non-believers. Åke has done arguably the most for our field by mobilizing such an impressive international network of collaborators. And I've learned a lot about collaborating and networking from him. Number 3, communication. The T factor I heard about today. I like that, the T factor. Spreading the message of a chemical safe world is something that Åke can do like no other. No other person can do that so well. Linda Birnbaum, director of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences and the National Toxicology Program in the US, told me, "I have always been able to ask Åke Bergman difficult questions and always get clear, understandable answers. We share a passion for translating complex issues of environmental health into terms that the public can appreciate. Whether it's talking to the Minister of the Environment, the Princess, the Consulate General, students, colleagues, the general public, Åke has made it his mission to clearly communicate strategies and options for a chemical safe world." The T factor. He knows the language that needs to be spoken to get the right attention and make impact. I took this picture last March at the stakeholders meeting, the final meeting of the EDC Mixed Risk Project. It was taken right after the moment that Åke looked at the audience and said very clearly, "The health risks associated with mixtures of man-made chemicals are underestimated." Clear words delivered directly to the policymakers and the industry representatives in the room. An arrow that hit its mark. An example to all of us. Number 4, generosity. Åke cares. He genuinely cares. I heard that from his students this afternoon after lunch. He cares about the environment, he cares about our health, and he cares about future generations. His generosity knows no bounds. He was the most gracious host to my mother and me during our trip to China in 2015. His generosity goes further. He shares his time, he shares his knowledge, he shares himself. I was reading this report, Chemical Pollution and Challenges in the Yangtze River Delta. It was written to mark the end of the ChemStress project. I came across a piece of text that must have been written by Åke. I'd like to read it to you. It says, "We hope ChemStress will bring scientists and decision makers closer together to enable science-based management for improved human health and environmental prosperity. It is my sincere hope that you will learn and read from what we are sharing with you in this book." Åke's commitment to the cause of a chemical safe world and his generosity in sharing himself, his time, his knowledge is a lesson that I take to heart. I should also mention that I got to know Åke's wife, Brigitte, recently. And I thank her for her generosity and for sharing Åke with the rest of us. And finally, an important quality for a chemical safe world is the quality of renewal. The road to a chemical safe world is ever changing, and Åke never stands still. He has taught me the lesson of renewal, how important it is to adapt and change according to the challenges and opportunities that present themselves in our world. Åke has done so many things in his career: a chemist, a teacher, a director, a spokesperson, a bridge builder, a leader. He is a master at renewal and regeneration. This is absolutely essential in the vision for a chemical safe world. While we cannot forget the lessons of the past, as Leif said today, we cannot forget the lessons of the past. We cannot stand still. We need to constantly innovate and invest in the creativity and new ideas and new solutions to these very, very tricky challenges that are facing us. When I saw this painting earlier this year in Manitoba at a native Canadian trading post, it made me think of Åke. It is a painting by a First Nation artist named Kurt Marcus. It's a painting of a phoenix. The phoenix is a mythical, long-lived bird that regenerates or is born again or in cycles. The phoenix represents renewal and resurrection, qualities we need in a chemical safe world. The phoenix also represents the idea that the end is only the beginning. It is a fitting symbol for Åke, as I know this symposium marks not only the end of a chapter of your life, but the beginning of the next chapter of your life. So I will stop here. And even if my vision for a chemical safe world may be a point far away in the galaxy, Åke, I want to thank you for bringing us miles and miles closer to that point. You have inspired me and everyone in this room, and you will continue to do so for many years to come. Åke, tack.